Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Welcome aboard Flight 264. We will be in the air approximately 2 hours.
Filled up with people. We wanted to give people a chance to join before we got too far in the proceedings. I just want to thank everybody for joining us today for our inaugural edition of Aviation Town Hall. We are going to be holding a series of monthly discussions about topics pertaining to African aviation over the next coming months. And we hope that you will be able to join us and participate. If you've got an idea for a topic, please do send us an email at info@averocapital.com and we'll add that to our schedule. So I would just like to welcome everybody. We've got loads of heads of industry, captains of businesses, leaders in aviation from across the world. So thank you very much for joining us today. I'm going to hand over to Alex Nwuba, who's going to introduce our guests. And then we're going to have a short video interlude whilst the rest of the people join us. And then we're going to get straight into it. It's only a 1-minute video, so it won't take up too long. Over to you, Alex.
Well, thank you very much for having me on this event. It's a pleasure to be here.
Around Sunday,
to discuss the issues pertaining to our industry, how we can make progress in that regard. Today, the panel consists of many captains of industry, many participants in the industry. We're joined by none other than Group Captain Ojikutu, as well as Mr. Olumide Ohuayo. We're joined by media personality Wale. All the names are up, I think I see. 1 second. I'm having a bit of a difficulty here. We're joined by the Professor Obiora, who is the chairman of United Nigeria Airlines, and we're joined by Captain Iyayi and other parties who will be speaking to many of the issues, answering questions and speaking to the issues. I left out Captain Michelia, who is the CEO of Wesley, who will also be a panelist. So we may proceed. Sindy. Okay, so let's proceed. The topic today is Nigeria Air, and we've heard many things about this project. It was unveiled in 2018 with a ribbon event at the Farnborough Air Show, in which the government talked about bringing Nigeria closer to the world. And subsequent to that, the project was put on hold. They proceeded with the project. And today we find ourselves at the point of takeoff. And at this point of takeoff, there's been a number of questions as to whether the flight we're about to get on is the appropriate flight for the Nigerian environment. And that's why we've invited the panelists this morning to discuss this subject and make proposals, share their thoughts on this project going forward, and so on. So basically, in 2018, when this project was first launched, I was one of the critics of the project, not because, like most people, I didn't want to see us have a national carrier. It's a beautiful idea to have a Nigerian airplane appear at many of the international airports around the world. And as you board, you see the Nigerian flag blowing in the wind. And as the ribbon showed during the presentation, Nigeria will be very well profiled on the web background against that ribbon. And subsequent to that, it was said at that point that the minister was at Farnborough to unveil the ribbon, as well as to meet with potential aircraft manufacturers, as well as potential investors in the project. And fast forward to recently, the government has finally announced the preferred bidder for the project being Ethiopian Airlines. And that preferred bidder was the only bidder that was involved, that participated in the process. Most others did not participate. And so today we find ourselves with a national carrier called Nigerian Air, owned by that structure, 49% by Ethiopian Airlines, as well as 5% by the government and 46% in the hands of the Nigerian public. And so the question for our panel today is this the appropriate model for a national carrier for a country of 217 million Nigerians? Is that appropriate? So the way this would work is that we will each of the panelists their thoughts about this project, and then basically at the end of the day, summarize their findings and come up with a proposal or suggestion or what we think of the National Carrier Project. So the first person we're going to throw up on the question block is Mr. Olumide. Sorry, first of all, we'll let Captain Michelia describe to us his view of this project, what his thoughts are about this project, and it will set the basis for the functions that would follow. So Captain Michelia, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Dr. Alex. Like you rightly mentioned, well, when the project came about, I am actually an advocate of seeing Nigerian airlines flying over the airspace in the world. And it doesn't matter whether it is a national carrier or a flag carrier. When the government took up the bull by the horn, said they will set up a national carrier, I'm in agreement. The reason simply is because, you know, for the many years that we have been operating, where domestic carriers have been trying, they have been able to service the domestic routes and the West African routes quite successfully. However, the system and policies of government has not allowed them to grow to the level of competition with the foreign airlines that we have allowed to enter our airspace. And these reasons are because, like I've always said, the system, there's a global standard to run aviation system. Our industry is overbloated with unnecessary expenses. Now, we don't blame the agencies for charging us so much, or what some of us call multiple taxation, because they have been pulled off this federal subvention and put on IGR. Now, the problem with that is there's nothing wrong with putting them on IGR, but the problem with that is that we have culturally overbloated the system with support staff rather than the actual professionals required. Fast forward, if we go and make comparison with USA, for example, equated based on population to how many people that they have employed in the aviation sector, we'll find out that we are not doing the right thing. And that for that reason, our tickets are higher because of so many of these reasons that time will not allow me to enumerate one by one. So national carrier or flag carrier is a necessity. However, like you rightly pointed out, the way we are going about it, it is just so new, so fresh. And I could simply say the reason that it's being done that way is because there is a hidden interest. And any step you take, you find that there is a hidden interest. And insofar as there is a hidden interest and no transparency, like we have seen, this project is going to suffer. And it is not going to, or is going to add to our problems. Now, we also talk about people coming in and taking over our airspace and doing whatever they do. Now, it is very wrong to assume that foreign airlines can come here and do what they like and choose and pick what we should do, particularly with the recent blocking of our travel agencies from accessing their cheap tickets. Why not? Because there is a BASA agreement which has in it how they take their money, the excess monies that they have not utilized here, how they take it out. Have we been living up to those standards for them? No, we haven't. And why is it so glaring and a problem today? It's because we are not reciprocating. If we were reciprocating, our airlines would probably know that that is probably not happening, because the airlines are coming to Ghana and we can buy tickets cheaper in Ghana, Cameroon, and all that, because they are able to remit their monies without difficulties. Sure, we have problems with our own economy, and that is why probably the government is finding it difficult to fund those monies out. But that's not supposed to be the problem of a foreign person doing contract with you. So we should reconcentrate our efforts and be transparent. I would have expected to see the ownership of the airline in the first place with some Nigerian carriers. We have carriers like Air Peace at that time, which is big enough to be able to say, okay, I will take 25% stake of this thing. But what are we seeing? We are seeing ministry staff. And who are those ministry staff representing? So these are some of the things that are begging for answers. But for me, I think overall, the National Carrier Project is a good one, and that we should also try to look at it and bring up our aviation, take the bull by the horns, reduce the excess costs that the agencies have to carry because of the overbloated staff that they don't need, political employees. And that way, they will be able to reduce the cost of recovering that they will charge the airlines will reduce the amount of cost and charges, thereby making even our tickets competitive with the region. The reasons that our tickets are more than everywhere else in the region is because we pay too much surcharges. The airlines here don't survive. Then finally, if we want to have a robust aviation, we must also follow global practice. Airlines in Europe and wherever they see coming here and flying our passengers, they get their funding at 1.5% to 3.5% and spread over 25 years. Until we're able to do that, it will be a problem. And how can we get this done? This BASA fund that we used to have, this commercial agreement, we should resume it, review the BASA so where we are unable to make up frequent, let's make money from it. That way we can warehouse this money with central bank and allow qualified airlines to access it at 1 to 3% over 25 years. And I think we'll be able to grow the industry to compete with the global market. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. We're going to try and keep to time. So you will notice at different points, there will be a timer which will indicate that your time is running out. So let's please try and stick to time. Thank you very much for that introduction. We're going to go to who I presume is the father of the house, Group Captain John Ojikutu. You're going to give us some words and share some of your experience in terms of the history of Nigeria's attempt to have a national carrier. So over to you. You've got 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Sindy. And I have to appreciate you for this novel idea. The problem of Nigerian Airways or a national carrier didn't start today. The unfortunate thing about what we have in our hands today has to do with the way the national carrier, then known as Nigerian Airways, was kind of managed, and I'm sorry to say, by the military government into a government airline. I think that is where the problem of Nigerian Airways came from. And by 1993, when the first attempt was made by Captain Joji and some other people to have the Air Nigeria, till today, what I've been seeing is that we've been having adulterated wine in an old skin instead of having new wine in the old skin. What are we doing today? We are bringing in our competitors into our own bilateral air service agreement. For me, I don't think it worked. Up till 2019, I had followed the plan by the present administration to establish a national carrier. I have followed it up to around November, until it dawned on me that the way we are going the way of establishing a government carrier rather than a national carrier. And I said to the Honorable Minister, if we cannot establish a national carrier, let us establish flag carriers from ARIC and Aero that we gave over 200 billion to in 2012, and we got practically nothing out of it, even up till now. So again, I have still not changed my mind that rather than for us to have a national carrier with our competitors on our bilateral air service agreement, it will not give us any advantage at all. No matter what we try to do, it will never give us any advantage. Let us find a way within the country, but we will need foreign technical partners. We will need foreign technical partners. And that foreign technical partners must not come from any of our competitors on the BASA route. I've suggested that we should look for technical partners either from Australia or Canada. They may have alliances with these people, but some of the challenges we think we are going to get with Ethiopian Airlines, that we've already given about 4 destinations in this country, which I know at the end of the day is going to cause trouble by the time we set up a national carrier. Are we going to stop the agreement we have with Ethiopian Airlines on the 4 destinations it has in this country or our own national carrier will be competing with it, even though we are joined together, sharing the earnings in these 4 international airports. We need to look into all this. So my final talk here now is that we cannot go into any partnership with any foreign airline that is a competitors with us on the Basa routes. Let us look for alternatives from other sources. It could still be from America or Europe, but let it not be any of our competitors on this route. Thank you.
Thank you, Group Captain. Thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to Alex Nwuba, who's going to start the questions for the panelists. But before I do, I just want to do a bit of housekeeping. We've now got a fair few people in the room, and you will see that you can, if you like what you hear, you can share emotions, you can ask questions in the questions and answers. And during proceedings, we're actually going to be launching polls. So please participate to make this a more interactive and engaging experience for us all. So having said that, thank you very much for the thumbs up. Over to Alex.
Thank you very much, Cindy. So going to the answer and question sessions, I will start with the 2 initial speakers before I get into the others. And this question is for Captain Michelia. Do you think that the proposed, as you've stated, do you think that the proposed national carrier modeled is the appropriate model for us, given this situation we find ourselves in now?
Okay, no, at all, absolutely not. I think right from the onset, it has always been done wrongly. This model for Ethiopian is like Egbon said, Group Captain Ojukwu said. He said we should not have a competitor. I mean, there is no way Ethiopian Airlines will come and bring up an airline for Nigeria that will compete against itself. Why don't they just register Ethiopian Airlines Nigeria Limited so they become a local carrier? And then since they have capacity and source of funds, they can be a local airline, but it should be a Nigerian Ethiopian version, then it works. But for Ethiopian Airline to come in and we expect that they will build a national carrier for us, then that's to me not correct at all. We've tried these things before. 92, Nigeria Airways before the death. They thought they could resuscitate it by allowing British Airways to do some kind of code sharing and what have you. It ended up in a mess as well. And so I don't think this is the right model, and I think we should jettison it and start doing something afresh. I would prefer to see a model where there's transparency of who are the real owners. And I want to see some Nigerian airlines part of the whole stakeholders, like 25% of something. That way it makes sense. Otherwise, then why don't we rejig the aviation system, reduce the cost of operation, give access to funding for the local carriers so that we can develop the flag carriers out of it. That is my own thinking.
Thank you. Group Captain Ojukwu, what is the necessity for a government-sponsored airline?
Like I said, up to 2019, I supported the idea of the government having interest. But I remember mentioning that it should not be more than 10%, and that 10% was supposed to be for both federal and the state government. The minister agreed with me, both for states and federal government, 10%. About 25% for credible Nigerians. Another 25% for the airline, whatever is, for the domestic airlines, whatever is left for the public. We discussed that, and it was agreed, because I felt that if we're going to find a way to replace the Nigerian Airways, that is the way to start. Even though globally now, especially in the United States, there is nothing you call national carrier. What you have in the United States today are pure flag carriers. All of them, all the airlines you see flying from America today are all flag carriers. The American government, after the Pan Am crash, American government puts no money into any of these airlines except recovery money. In case anything happens, they put money there, but this money are supposed to be recovery. If you're going to do anything like that, let us know that it is not a government carrier. Let us not turn this
Let me
airline.
follow up. Let me follow up by asking that one of the key objectives of our carrier project is national security. And so when we see government's involvement in aviation is ensuring that they have equipment available to support military operations and other types of related types of operations. Given the model where the Nigerian carrier
once you have a flag carrier, and that's what I said, all these are assets of national security. Once you have designated some airline,
majority,
it doesn't matter. For as long as you designate them as flag carriers and they are operating on BASA, which is a commonwealth of this nation, they can be called upon at any time. I had a very rough experience with Nigerian Airways when we were carrying troops to Liberia. Very unfortunate, and I need to say it here, because a lot of people do not even know what is the essence of having a national carrier and even flag carriers, that they are national assets to national security. So if we have a flag carrier instead of national carrier, it still doesn't stop government from using those aircraft in the case of any emergency. Flag carriers, national carriers are assets of national security.
Okay. Mr. Huayo, this is for you. Thank you. Do you believe, do you think that the shareholding structure that is proposed will have an impact on our existing BASA agreements, the bilateral air service agreements? I think you're muted. You're muted.
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. Yeah, I think we just go back to history. When we had the Virgin Nigeria here, and they could not operate into the US, and because the US government insisted that the Virgin airline was using Virgin Nigeria as a backdoor into the US and trying to bypass the agreement they had on the Great Britain US route. And all efforts to ensure that we got Virgin Nigeria to operate in that country did not work till the airline went down. Now we're looking at that scenario here now. We are giving the same percentage to Ethiopia Airlines. And what is the probability that this kind of issue will not come up again on the European route or on the US route, based on agreement that the Ethiopian government have with those countries? So it's that area that I need them to look at, and the percentage given to the airline in that respect, that might affect some of the foreign routes that the new Nigerian airline wants to fly to.
A chance that 49% being the largest shareholder. If you look at the structure, 49% to Ethiopian Airlines, 5% to the Nigerian government, 46% to Nigerian. So by definition, ownership and control is in the hands of foreign entities. Let me quote something that was provided by the government. It said, this was provided by the transaction advisor to the government. Much away, it says, eligibility for a national carrier to operate a bilateral air service agreement would come under the conditions of existing bilateral agreements in which the state operating the bilateral agreement will have to controlling ownership. And so if we have a situation where controlling ownership is not in the hands of Nigerian entities, and you find a situation where this Nigerian air will not be able to operate, say, open skies to the US or under bilaterals to any other market, what will be the options for Nigerians in that instance?
Can you take that question again? Can you take that question again, please?
I said, if given the situation that ownership control as defined under BASA and legally, the carrier or a government outside of Nigeria or an entity outside of Nigeria, and therefore Nigeria Air, the proposed national carrier, is unable to operate the BASA agreements, what will be the implication for Nigeria and Nigerian travelers? Did you get the question, Olumide? Olumide may be frozen, so let me pass that question to Wole. Wole, you heard my question. Are you able to provide me an answer on that? You're also muted, Wally. You're still muted.
Okay. Can you hear me, Dr. Alex?
Yes,
Please come again. Please, can you take the question again,
I said
please?
It is considered that under BASA, ownership of the airline, Nigeria Air, is in the hands of
Hello,
implication
doctor.
for Nigerian travelers. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Very
doctor.
good.
Thank you, Doctor. I've listened to discussion by the panelists, and I'm quite impressed with the different views and the different opinions they have shared. A fantastic one. And I must commend Sindy for putting this together. It's highly, highly commendable. I hope we're going to have more of this. The issue of Nigeria Air has been a contentious one since the federal government or the Ministry of Aviation made public the ownership structure of the airline. And this has been on for quite a long time, both forth and back, and one issue that has dominated our lovely platform. I actually see this differently. It's personally my view. I see it differently because Captain Ojukutu mentioned competition. He said you can't go into an agreement with your competitors. And somehow I disagree. You can actually go into competition with your competitor as long as there's a clear demarcation of what the agreement is all about. Talking about the ownership, I think to get this airline going, the federal government or the Ministry of Aviation may have looked at different what they have on the table and decided to settle with what they have. I would have wished that maybe a member of the Ministry of Aviation would have been, invited to this discussion so that we can actually know exactly what went behind the scene or what went behind the table so that we can have a general view. I do not have problem with that, and I don't see that really hampering this situation. Rather, I will see it as a very big advantage to Nigerian travelers because it's a kind of symbiotic or going to be a kind of symbiotic relationship because ET is a very strong airline. It's one of the biggest airlines in Africa or in the world. So I think it's going to rub off on us and we are going to have a very good head start. I think the advantage will be for traveler rather than the other way around. Whatever that must have happened, I think the ministry need to go back to the drawing table, look at what these eminent panelists have put together, are discussing, and try to adjust, look at it. If possible, let us have a town hall meeting where the Minister of Aviation will explain to us what happened. I do not want to believe that they do not take all consideration. They do not look at all consideration before taking the action. We need to hear from them. I think that is where the ministry is not letting Nigerians to know whatever. So we can begin to ask questions. What are the things that we have done? How did we arrive at this situation that we have found themselves? But like Captain Sheila said, is a good thing. The national carrier is a good thing. I have supported it. The only time I went against the national carrier was, or the airline was when the Ministry of Aviation was delaying in setting up this airline. And it took us almost 6-7 years for us to even get to where we are.
Sorry, Wally, excuse me for interrupting you. Is Wally there?
I think he's frozen.
Okay, I will just immediately jump off the question because I wanted to ask that question of, and I will go right away. Wally, I said I apologize for interrupting you. And I will address my next question to the Professor Okonkwo, who is the chairman of United Nigeria. Sir, you built one of the most efficient airlines in this country that optimizes the marketplace. What do you believe would be the impact of the entry of Ethiopian Airlines into a partnership with the national carrier, Nigeria Air?
Thank you very much. We, the airline operators of Nigeria, have no doubt that the entry of Ethiopian Airline in the so-called national carrier is not good for the industry. And we don't see anything Nigerian in this Nigerian air. We believe from our information and inquiries that this is most likely a camouflage of interest. And we do not see the reason why government is divesting and offloading their interests in different enterprises in the last few years as a policy thrust. And then they're embarking on a new setup where they're saying the government has interest. It's a policy somersault. And in order to achieve that, the people in government have continued to demonize the local operators. If they are not saying that they don't have the capacity, they'll be referring to funds that were given some years back. I don't think this is proper. It is not fair. These operators in the last few years have built the most progressive and competitive industry in the world in aviation up to before the COVID era. And when you talk about funds given, there are so many funds given by government to different sectors in this country that they have not recovered. They haven't recovered this money not because it's aviation, because of government ways of doing things. You don't talk about aviation companies collapsing in Nigeria because of inefficiency, because all over the world, there are also stories of aviation companies that have collapsed. We deserve some credit. What this industry needs is support. With little bit of support, which even Ethiopian Airlines is getting in their own home country, we can do a lot more. If we're operating locally, for operators in this setup, you know that the most difficult operation to do is 1 hour flight. 1 hour you're up, 1 hour you're down, 1 hour you're up. It is hard on the aircraft, it's hard on the crew. Flying 4, 5, 6, 7 hours haul is the best thing we can do. And we should know also that in some countries, 6 hours flight is still a local flight. If you're flying in the US, if you're flying in Russia, some places in Russia, you fly 7 hours still within the country. Aviation industry is the same all over the world. Any company that has IOSA, a member of IATA, can go to any part of the world. The aeropolitics requires that we need to step here, foreign affairs, Ministry of Aviation, to ensure that we get our own share of BASA agreement in some key countries, UK, United States of America, and all that. So we don't believe that this is for the interest of the country. Ethiopian Airlines, if you are bringing 3 aircraft on wait list to United Nigeria, I will just be giving about 300 hours a month and pay you a few hundreds of thousands of dollars, and does not give you any right to even be a shareholder in my company. So why should we be talking about that? When government was talking about national carrier, we think we're talking about a situation now where they're going to sign off 10 Boeing aircrafts or 10 new ERJ, and then they come in here brand new. It's a shame, and it's very mundane to be talking about national carrier in this modern time and world. I agree with those people who are talking about black carriers. And they continue to underestimate the national security nature of airline. It is essential service that must have to be gathered. The commonwealth of this thing needs to be protected. And for your information, I will not believe that they will suffer less fate than the Virgin Air that we're not allowed to get into the United States, because America understands the importance of this. the aero politics, and they protect their local carriers. If you allow, even if you arrive America in a private jet, you will not take off with that jet until as soon as you land at your first destination. You can't even go from New York to Los Angeles and Los Angeles to Florida. You have to park it there. And if you want to use private jet, you have to use the local private provider. And the Ethiopian Airways, Emirates, they know how much America has resisted them from penetrating their local market. What we need is that protection. These the so-called successful airlines, Ethiopian Airlines, Emirates, they continue to get government support. Even Ethiopian Airlines is not even on a strong footing. Their survival after COVID had to do with a whole lot of government support. Emirates is on record. They have received about $7 billion since COVID. How much did local operators receive? $4 billion was given to entire airline ecosystem, out of which $3 billion went to the airline operators, and it was split into a few hundreds, which does not even cover 1 week operational, 1 day expenses. If we really want to help this industry, the ministry that is supposed to be a custodian of this interest should desist henceforth from demonizing the operators. We will not accept it. We've not been speaking out for some time. And look at what we're going through. We cried out in January, February that the industry is going through some stress. Today it's obvious. We are still flying because we are using our operational funds to cushion the impact of this. So I really think that for us, we are able and capable of competing with most countries all over the world. As we are, even as much as we're not appreciated here, we get invitations from different parts of the world to come and help them, solve the aviation problem internally. Unless some people can easily say that Ethiopian Airlines is flying in other parts of Africa. Go to those countries where they are flying. Go to their supermarkets. Go to their hotels. Go to their joints. They are owned by foreigners. They don't have the capacity to do that. You can't compare that with what we can do here in Nigeria. So for us, we do not think that this is the best thing happening. This is not genuine. The transparency here, we must continue to ask for it. The selling point in the villa is that Nigeria is not investing anything, and that attracts probably the Mr. President who is supporting that. But nobody has told him what Nigeria will be losing. What will be losing is that the private sector will collapse in aviation. We can't survive with these people. It's not fair. They're tapping into us, and if you need the expertise of Ethiopian Airlines, we employ them and pay them, and they stay away. So this is just a little bit of what I think, and I repeat for emphasis, we have not seen anything Nigerian in this Nigerian air. It's a common flight, and they must not be allowed to be sustained.
Thank you, sir. Next question is for Babatunde Adenuji. Sorry it's taking so long to. I want to give you a scenario. According to the minister, Ethiopian Airlines will be bringing $1 million for the equity, 49% equity in national carrier. Nothing is said about the total capital required for. We did a bit of math, and we discovered that if 49% presented by 300 million, then total equity of the company is about $613 million, of which government's 5% is actually $30 million or billion naira. Government has said it has spent 400 million, but other sources like Nairametrics says government has budgeted over 7 billion. So the budget of government is about 50% of the expected equity contribution, and government says we won't spend any more, but the reality, in order to meet its obligation, would need to cough up a total of 14 billion. And Professor Biora said the president is being led to believe that nothing major will come out of Nigeria, and so that's a basis for the investment. Now, it doesn't stop there. Nigerian shareholders will be expected to then kick in 46 billion. That is over $183 million, which is claimed that will be paid for by two companies called MRS and as well as MRS and SACO, both operators to many of the domestic airlines that exist. So inherently, at some point of interest for those companies. Neither of these two companies have actually made statements to the stock exchange saying that they're entering into the market and they will be such capital for the operation of this airline. So with this kind of figure, do you think that Nigerians want a national carrier? I want a national carrier. Everybody wants a Nigerian airline that reflects what Nigeria is all about. Our objection seems to be around the fact that it is Nigerian in name, but not Nigerian in character. So do you believe that this is what Nigerians want and what Nigerians are? This type of national carrier that is being proposed that will enter first into the domestic market, which is already being utilized. We know there are challenges. Or were we looking for a national carrier that reflected Nigeria on a global basis? I'm sorry it was a long, convoluted statement leading the question, but I'm sure you can handle it.
Okay, thank you very much. I think fundamentally, I think we're solving the wrong problem. On my part, I don't share the enthusiasm for the national carrier project. I think fundamentally the industry has a problem. The underlying industry structure worldwide is challenged. And this challenge is being exacerbated in Nigeria by government policies. To take an example, many of the major suppliers of the airlines, like the agencies, are basically charging government mandated fees. You know, we are in between, we have privatized and liberalized, and then we're still government. There's a huge disconnect. The industry has a challenge. The solution to that challenge is not bringing one carrier in the name of increasing competition and ending up distorting competition. Because basically what you are doing is you are funding a carrier with foreign partners with government funds, basically, and you are giving advantages that do not accrue to the domestic carriers. So I think there is a lot of incongruity in the whole thing, not just what you've mentioned, and there is not enough information. The industry itself is a stakeholder-driven industry, but when you now put the whole country into it and the level of communication is what we have had, then it's really challenging to see you know, the way forward. But I think I want to agree with those who have said that, look, being where we are now, the biggest push we can make is for a level playing field. If you are going to bring in a so-called national carrier, and that's government commitment and decision, then they should follow the rules of the game as being followed by other domestic carriers. If you are going to allow them do wet lease, then you need to change the rules that will allow others do wet lease. You know, so make it a level playing field, because the challenge we see is that the market is not efficient, and these decisions are not going to make it any more efficient. They're just going to complicate the situation. And so what we can drive for is the real solutions to the problems we have of how can we make the industry sustainable and really competitive, and really competitive, not distorting competition in the name of making it efficient. You know, my last word is basically, like I've said, we are where we are. I think we spent the last 7 years making it clear, as some of us, that this does not seem to be the right decisions. There's been changes on the government side based on the feedback they've received, but we don't think they've made enough changes to make it what it should be. But government has finally made a decision. So my push is that going forward, what we can push for is level playing field, more transparency on these transactions. We really need to know, what contract are you negotiating? What terms? If it's a PPP, it means it's a long-term contract that will guide the whole engagement. Are the views and interests of stakeholders being captured in this contract? For me, that's the holistic approach to some of these questions you have raised. Thank you very much. Hello, Alex.
Thank you, Tunde. I think Alex's internet has frozen. Thank you very, very much for that contribution. I just want to just jump in at this point and say that I actually find it quite odd that service providers for existing Nigerian airlines would enter into a partnership with the government to compete with their own customers. I don't know in which country that would be allowed. And you know, if I was a domestic airline who was being supplied by either of those two companies, I would be taking a look at my contract, because you can't be you know, buying shares in another airline and then potentially disadvantaging your own customers who have been loyal customers for many, many years. So, you know, I'm glad that somebody made the point about the, you know, who those partners are, because that is part of the problem. Who the partners are is part of the problem. A lot of people understand the need for a national carrier, but the way it's being put together leaves me to feel that the domestic airlines are not being supported deliberately right now. They've been suffering for a long time. We've had 7 years of an administration who have had a focus for aviation, and at the 11th hour we're having runway repairs being done, and then we are having, you know, forex issues, fuel scarcity issues, and then all of a sudden, instead of solving the problems with forex so that the domestic airlines who have got aircraft on the ground which can't be repaired because they don't have access to funds, to the forex part of the funds, you know, you're not supporting them to get their aircraft on the ground, but yet everywhere you are talking about poor performance of Nigerian airlines. If you are a contributing factor to the poor performance, you should not be, you know, entering into an arrangement with somebody else. You know, you should, if we want a level playing field, let it be a level playing field. Put the domestic carriers on the same footing as as whoever it is that you want to partner with. You've chosen to partner with a carrier that's supported by their government, whilst you're not supporting your own carriers. Make it make sense, somebody. Now, do we have Alex back? No, we don't. Let me go to Captain Roland Ihai. What do you think about the impact on the Nigerian airlines is going to be for this national carrier?
Good morning. Thanks very much, Cindy, and thanks everybody for all your contributions. I start by saying that a lot of people have spoken, and I take the points made. I listened to Wale Shadari. I accept the fact that there might be need for carrier. I listened to Group Captain Ojikutu, and I accept the fact that his position is actually well-founded. And I've listened to Professor Obiora. He's made valid points. Now, in my own position, the particular partnership that is being entered into by the government with Ethiopian, for me, smacks with, you know, some form of, I don't know what to call it, but I think there's some element of deceit. I believe the entire process is opaque. And beyond that, I don't think it makes any strategic, sense for the government to be entering into a partnership with Ethiopian. Now, I'm gonna draw our minds to certain things that are very crucial, particularly in the African market, which I believe should be something that should have informed the government that the steps they're taking is ill-informed. Let's look at the SATIP. That's a single African air transport market. Of the 54 African countries to date, about 30 of us have signed. And why is that? It's simply because a lot of African countries realize once you have SATIP, it's the first movers market. And a lot of African countries are not ready. Even Nigeria, we could be ready as the government will do the needful and shore up the position of the domestic carriers to be able to take advantage of that market. But no, rather than do that, the government is now, taking an approach that would actually totally decimate the domestic carriers. Because my view is the moment you enter into a partnership with Ethiopian Airlines, what you're doing essentially is you're encouraging cabotage, because they'll come into the domestic market. Coming into the market, I would imagine that what they would want to do is penetrate that market. And what sort of market penetration strategies are they going to sort of deploy? They probably do that by lowering fares. Now, the fares they would lower will not make them competitive, but they have some funding from their government that can be used for the purpose of fighting the domestic carrier to a point where they fail. And if and when they fail and they're still in the market, the next thing is they will have a monopoly. When you have a monopoly, what do? You throw market fares up. So inevitably, this is not a welcome development for the consumer. So for me, the choice of Ethiopian is sort of a zero strategic value add to the domestic market, to the Nigerian industry, and it makes absolutely no. If that team is looked at, as a matter of fact, I expected the government to have taken time to study the Vision 2025, now 2035 Ethiopian Airlines. Essentially, what they have done is to say that in anticipation of SATIM, they want to dominate the African continent, which should be the primary objective of the Nigerian government as far as aviation is concerned. And we have the market, nobody else on the continent. So if we have the market and the government is interested in ensuring that we can reverse this capital flight flow and all the rest of it, the government should be investing meaningfully in the industry to enhance and shore up the position of the domestic carriers so that we can actually compete in those markets. Unfortunately, the government hasn't done that, but rather it has gone ahead to say, well, we would make Ethiopian our partner. If you go to read a report that was written on the 26th of September, 2022, in Airport Technology, it talks about this strategy that Ethiopia is actually deploying all over Africa. For the purpose of records, Ethiopia has partnerships in 8 other countries in Africa, all in anticipation of this SATIM and trying to shore up the African market for itself. They own ASCAI 40%, Malawi, Guinea, Chad, Mozambique, Cote d'Ivoire, and recently DRC Congo. This is essentially something they have perfected in their Vision 2025. And now they have 135 airplanes. They have also said, just about a week and a half ago, the new the CEO of Ethiopian said they're going to increase their fleet. They will doubling the fleet size from 135 to 250 within the next 5 years. Essentially, 250 airplanes cannot and is more than sufficient to service the domestic and international routes that Ethiopian is going to now with a large surplus. So all that is meant to achieve is to say that they will go into the domestic markets of all these other countries they're having footprints in, Nigeria now included. Now, what for me they're trying to do, which also said clearly, is that they are going into what you call aviation colonialism for Africa. And what that is, it was expounded in written by Chris Lowe in Simple Flight. It was printed, I think it was published on the 21st of April, 2020. Ethiopian Airlines, in that article talking about how Ethiopian Airlines plans to dominate the skies of Africa, it talked clearly about aviation colonialism. So if we take all of this on board, I mean, is it that our government is not, clearly in the market to see all of this, read all of this, and understand what the strategy is as far as they're concerned? And if you say that you're establishing a company and you're sort of, you're looking at $300 million capitalization with an equity of 49% to Ethiopian, and they will bring in 3 airplanes, 737-800 airplanes, which is at this point surplus to their requirements on a wet lease. Are we not going back the same thing that happened with Virgin? Virgin Nigeria became it was clear that Virgin Nigeria was a Virgin Atlantic, by proxy. And essentially, like Odun had said, Virgin Nigeria had a problem going into America because it was clear that they made it to, they made the point, the US government made the point that this is Virgin Atlantic trying to come into the American market by, through the back door. Essentially, the same thing would happen in this particular arrangement because it will be seen as Ethiopian Airlines coming through the back door. ASKY has not been restricted from going into the US, even though it is flying as Ethiopian, because that market is not a huge market as far as the American government is concerned. But I can guarantee you, the moment Ethiopian as Nigeria Air wants to fly into the US, into the UK, or any of these major markets in the in the West, we're going to come back with the same problem. So invariably, what this will do in the longer term to the Nigerian market is that it will be decimated completely. It will kill employment because Ethiopia will do exactly what they did in ASKY. In ASKY, they took 737-800s and took Q400s into the market. It is 100% crewed by them. The management of ASKY is Ethiopian Airlines, and nothing any different will happen. Yes, we have appointed Captain Dapo Olumide as the MD of Nigeria Air. Is he the substantive MD or a figurehead? Because if Ethiopian is going to be calling the shots, they just put in Dapo there for the purpose of saying, well, we have a Nigerian at the helm of affairs. And that for me will be a disservice, not only as an insult to the person of Captain Olumide, but to an insult to the entire Nigeria. So we need to be very clear where we are headed with this. For me, I believe this whole Nigeria Air thing is just all the shenanigans surrounding it is not in the longer term interest of the domestic carriers, is not in the longer term interest of the Nigerian consumers, and definitely is a way to decimate the Nigerian aviation market such that we will not even be able to now compete in the SATIM when it comes on stream fully. So I believe that the government should retrace its steps. For me, if you're going to have a strategic partner, certainly not a competitor that already has a stronger footing than you have and is able to leverage that at every turn to ensure that you're not in any way, close to competition. Because Ethiopian will not allow the Nigerian, whoever that Nigerian airline is coming out of Nigeria Air, to compete. They're not stupid. They know what they're coming into and they know exactly what they want. And for the records, Ethiopian approached Air Peace to have a footprint in the domestic market in Nigeria, such that they were willing to pay Air Peace royalties. Ethiopian tried the same thing in 2018 with the Ghanaian authorities, and they were thrown out. So the point is, if Ethiopia, with all the antecedents, in 2017, they blocked Arik Air from flying into Ethiopia. They did the same thing again to Air Peace in recent times. So if they are doing all of this to protect their own markets, what for us to now say, look, come into our market and you give them an unfettered access? I believe this is the worst thing that can happen to the Nigerian industry, and I believe the process till date is not transparent. There's a lot of opacity it's shrouded in secrecy all through. And the so-called Nigerian investors, MRS and SACOL, they are not really investors. They are just names, presented by the government to say we have other people. Sovereign Wealth Fund was supposed to be part of this. As soon as the announcement was made, within an hour of that announcement, the Sovereign Wealth Fund came up, had nothing to do with it. So invariably, this tells me that something is not right with the entire process. Now, as a closing, let's go back to the preamble of the ICAO Convention. It talks about the fact that whilst it is good, are you with me, to encourage friendship amongst nations, if that friendship is abused, it will become, and it can become, a threat to national security. I see this that is being done presently by the Hadi-led administration to be a threat to the national security of the country. I also see it as a way to decimate the domestic market such that you are trying to give a dog a bad name in order to hang it. They've said all sorts about domestic carriers. I disagree with them. If any of them was astute enough as a business person, I would have expected, with all the expertise they're propounding to have set up an airline. This is an airline using government as a face, but owned by private individuals. That's my contention. And I think on that basis, it should be stopped and a more transparent process be put in place. If we're going to have a national carrier, absolutely no problems with it, because there's a need to reciprocate all our bilateral and multilateral agreements with different countries, but it should be done in a way that gives the benefit of Commonwealth to all and not to a few. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Captain Niyai. I have the next question for Wole. Wole, you were speaking earlier. As we know, a number of African countries already have national carriers. We have Ethiopian, as we said, South African Airways, Kenyan, Royal Air Maroc, Senegal, Tunis, Air. How have these airlines been performing, and how do you, given the amount of support that these airlines would traditionally face going forward, what do you think will be the impact to the Nigerian, if the necessity arose to support this project owned primarily by Ethiopian and have to put money in to support this airline? What are your thoughts on that? You're muted, Wole.
I listen to Captain Roland here. He's a very good talker. Anytime he speaks, you have no choice than to listen to him. I just want to ask a question. Is ET a victim of his own success? I think ET has done so well that he's becoming like a threat to so many people, or so many people feels that ET coming into the industry will actually distort the market. And one of the speakers also talked about, not protecting the domestic market, the domestic airlines. And I asked this question: with due respect to the domestic airlines or Nigerian airlines, I have not seen a recommitment to reciprocate some of these bilateral air services agreement that we have. Most of the time you have what we call capital flight, because if you go to the NCA registry or register, you find out the huge amount of money the airlines cut away from this country. But rightly so, they also provide services. Like I always tell people when they talk about foreign airlines coming into the country, as if they are coming here not to provide the services that are required. Perhaps if we had very strong airlines, flag carrier airlines, or Nigerian carriers that could have reciprocated some of these bilateral air services agreement, honestly, I would have been more comfortable with not even having Nigeria Air. But I think by and large, we should do everything possible to make sure that we even take part in these markets. If you look at the intra-African market, or if you even look at inter-African market, airlines coming into this country, the African airlines take less than 5% or 10% of the market. What are we going to do? Are we going to leave this market to just the foreign airlines to begin to dominate or to begin to cut away the weight of this industry? And that is why I have supported anything that will make us to retain part of this market share. But it will be on one condition, that this thing must be done properly. I think what we need to look at, if we all agree that this project is good, except Captain Roland Iyayi that said that this project must be cancelled. I don't think it should be cancelled. We should look at ways we can work on what we have to make sure that there's a level playing field. And like the minister has said, he said this airline does not in any way going to stop other Nigerian airlines from taking part in the market. So I look at Kenya Airways, I look at Ethiopian Airlines, I look at Rwanda, and I've seen the beautiful things they have done. If you also check Rwanda, you find out that Rwanda has gone into big partnership with Qatar Airways. In fact, most of their facilities are being built by Qatar, if I'm right. And you also see a lot of investment. You see the partnership of many of these African airlines coming together to partner. I think it will be too quick for us to just assume that it's going to be a doomsday. I don't think so. But what we should do and try to do is to look at how we can send a memo or send a kind of, call the ministry to order that all these things that we have discovered, we try as much as possible to see how we can work at it and perfect it. I believe that this is a welcome idea. Apart from the fact that a lot of people have questioned this transparency of it, we need to look at it. We need we need more airlines in Africa. We need more airlines in Nigeria that can take advantage of this
Captain
market.
Michelle, this question is based.
Yes, Alex, go ahead.
I think he's gone again.
Yes.
Yeah.
May I speak?
Yeah, whilst Alex is waiting to come back, I just want to do a quick poll to see where people are, because I think some of the people in the chat seem to think that people don't want a national carrier, whereas I think quite a few of the speakers have said that they do. So I'm just going to ask this question. The panelists are able to participate as well. We'll just have 1 minute to answer. Can you all see the poll? Okay, I can see. See if we can get Alex back whilst people are responding. We've got just under 100 people in the webinar at the moment, so keep providing your responses. It's very useful to get a sense of what people think in the room as well.
Yeah.
Some people have raised their hands. We are going to be finishing this part of the session in a few minutes, and then we are going to go to questions and answers. And we should be able to give people the opportunity to ask the questions that they want to ask. So please just bear with us. I think Alex is having some problems. So I think we'll go to, just going to end it in a minute. Still people are.
Can I?
Yeah, you could talk.
Can I talk?
You're muted.
I would just like to speak about, to add something to what, to say something about what Wale said.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Actually, he did say Roland is a sweet talker and he likes to listen. Roland is not only a sweet talker, he also speaks sense. In this case, he spoke sense, and at least my mind also. I think we all agree national carrier is okay, but the way they're going about it, we cannot tie our hands in the boxing ring and expect us to fight a professional and win the title. It won't work. Ethiopian Airlines, like Roland clearly said, is supported by the government. We've been crying all along that government should support the airline. If the government decides to support the airline the way other airlines are supported, Nigerian carriers will form the flag carriers, and government will have no reason to even go into this project in the first place. But we are refusing to accept that what we are doing in Nigeria is wrong, and others will continue to take advantage of us and our market. I think Roland was right. Ethiopian Airlines should be cancelled. They are not a competitor. They cannot be, and they shouldn't be. It's an embarrassment for us as a nation with such a potential and we have the ability to be able to fund our airlines properly, the way Ethiopian is doing, and we will be able to do things right. And then we allow an African country that are doing the things right, rather than us do the things right and fix it, we are now allowing them to come and show us. What will they show us? So I think I stand with Roland. We should not accept that Ethiopians should do it. If they want to do it, let an individual Ethiopian businessman or somebody put in money, no problem, but not Ethiopian Airlines. This is my position, and I support Roland's ideas 100%, all of it.
I keep getting thrown in and out of this conference. I sincerely apologize. I was going to ask Michelle the very question he asked, and which is what is to say. Wale spoke about Ethiopia being the threat to its own success. And you've spoken earlier to the issue of the lack of success in the Nigerian domestic airline industry is the result of the kind of policies we put in place for the industry. So answering these two questions in parallel, how does Ethiopian Airlines entry into partnership with Nigeria help to grow the Nigerian aviation sector?
I think we've lost Captain Michelia. So can you?
Here.
Oh, you're there.
Okay. Well, that question was for me or for Wale?
Yes, for you, well, for you.
It wouldn't. Roland, yeah, he said it all. It wouldn't at all. It would not. It would rather just, I mean, we can develop aviation ourselves if we got the right support. Imagine if we got, our banks give us loans at what percentage? 22 to 35% or something. And how many years? 5 years or 10 years at the most. If we get 1.5 to 3% funding for airlines and 25 years, tell me why won't we survive? I mean, we have great men and women doing this business. I mean, to survive in the conditions which we have, and then you give us livery like others, I'm telling you that we will double our efforts better than the ones that are competing with us right now. So the solution will not be to do that at all. I think we should look at empowering the airlines, local industry to access funds at 1.5 to 3% over a period of 25 years. And let us allow the industry, the aviation sector, service providers, government or otherwise, to do the things according to the standards of the world, global standards and practices. Once we are able to do that, we'll find that we will be able to successfully compete and dominate the entire aviation in Africa even, because we have the potential and ability. Manpower-wise, resources, we do have it. So we appeal that the government should rethink it, because this thing really is like Roland said, some people just want to float a private carrier under the government name, and then eventually we find something that will not be the interest of other carriers. And our domestic carriers stand to suffer too for investing all their efforts and patriotism. We should applaud them on something that will keep them in the business and help to sustain our aviation industry. And best of all, it's good to also have them involved rather than have other people from outside. The airlines should be given the stake. The 46% should be dominated by the airlines. And that would be more transparent than it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Roland, Captain Roland, I'll come right back to you, but I want to ask Captain Babatunde Adeniji a question. The domestic airline industry, the Nigerian domestic airline industry has had many challenges, has been growing. Air Peace has acquired long-range aircraft, has tried to enter into multiple markets under the BASA agreement, and has run into challenges of not being able to get into those markets and calling on government to assist areas coming into the Nigerian marketplace to the floating of a new private airline. Remember, they call it a private airline because the government will only own 5% in that carrier. How will, rather than that approach, and has been spoken about earlier, how will the government putting billions of naira into the domestic airline industry help the industry to grow and become competitive on a global basis?
Okay, thank you very much, Alex. Basically, like I said earlier, the industry structure is very challenging. You are selling a perishable product. Your customers have other options. The best option first being that they refuse to fly, because flying is derived demand. They have to fly for a purpose. Your suppliers, like I said, most of them are basically charging you government mandated fees. They are not economic fees. They are not based on market realities. Also, those your suppliers have a lot of leverage that you don't have. Many of them are authorities. I'll give an example. I do not believe there's any government airport in Nigeria that has a user lease agreement or an SLA on the quality of services they deliver. The government is traveling sometimes, the airspace is closed for hours. Decisions and actions that have a negative economic impact on the carriers, and the carriers have no recourse. So you have suppliers that basically overwhelm you. We need to really seriously address that. You can't make progress with such suppliers. Other suppliers mentioned the banks. The reality is that the banks in Nigeria, based on our economy, cannot give those kind of funding that will make the airline competitive. It's not possible. The foreign exchange challenges we have, we know how it cripples the aviation industry even more than all the other industries. And obviously also, disposable income of Nigerians are disappearing by the day. That's why for me, I'm an advocate of government focusing on doing its most basic functions and doing them well as a starting point. And in the issues of industry, to try and improve the industry structure to make it more competitive, solve the real problems that the carriers face. Because if you don't solve those problems, okay, I'll give an example. The government funding for the dry lease, I am definite they got those funds at CBN rates. Can any Nigerian domestic carrier fund money at CBN rate for fund foreign exchange? Even the oil marketers have the same challenge. We are an oil producing nation, we can't refine. If government can decide to Okay, I think I'm back.
Yes, you're back.
We lost him there.
I'm back, Alex. Hello, Alex. Hello, Alex.
Okay, please
I was
wrap up.
just going to
ask
end.
Olumide a question next.
No, I was just going to end
go
on
ahead.
the note that if government can make the business decision of investing in Dangote refinery, why is that such a wrong idea for government to invest in a viable Nigerian carrier to sort of push this agenda rather than the other way around? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Olumide, let me ask you this question. As Babatunde just said now, the cost of capital in Nigeria is very high. And so it impacts on the profitability and sustainability of the airline industry. And Ethiopia will obviously come in with cheaper funds into the Nigerian economy. So that's an inducement to say, yes, funds will come into the Nigerian economy at cheaper rates to grow this sector. But the reality of it is that that money must go back. So they come in, the Ethiopian comes into Nigeria with equity, 300 million volume. It has to take 300 million back at the end of the day, along with profit, which 49% of the performance of this carrier, okay, adding to the demand for foreign exchange, both in terms of its capital importation and its profit return. How does that help the foreign exchange situation that we face as a nation and bring benefit to this idea of this type of partnership?
Well, I'm starting on the ending notes of Adeniji there, that why can't we join a Nigerian operator to build, or any of the operators or the Nigerian operators to build this carrier? Let's go to the history. At any time in the world, when the government intervenes in airline operations, it's either at the beginning stage of the country's aviation. And in our own case was when we formed Nigerian Airways. The other time the government has intervened in airline operations is when a major airline collapses. And in order to save jobs or keep flight services, the government intervenes. That happened in Argentina with aerolíneas, and it happened when we brought Ancon to step in for Alex not to fall. And the third one is when there's an absence of competition. In this case, we have competition on the domestic route. 3 airlines have started flying since after COVID in our market. So we are not lacking on domestic routes. The same Ethiopian Airlines wanted to join the domestic market 10 years ago. Most of the proponents of this deal were the forefront opposing Ethiopian Airlines from joining the domestic market. So what we need is that, from what I've analyzed now, at the stages where government can intervene in airline operations, none of these stages existing now. What we lack is our ability to compete on international routes and make use of our bilateral air services agreement. It's at this point we now look at it, that we build from within, or we look at capable partners who are not going to compete with us and will also give us a fair share. What I see here is that Ethiopia is coming to take competition and not even offering Nigerian government anything in Ethiopian Airlines. Virgin Atlantic offered Nigerian government and Nigeria 10% of Virgin Atlantic. Ethiopian Airlines is offering nothing. So we are at the wrong end. Again, at this time of having a foreign exchange crisis, we are going to pay for it. We are going to pay for this aircraft. We are going to pay for the crew, all going after our world-class dollars that we say we don't have, and it's not available for our airline. I think it's not a good timing to throw our dollars into this project. Rather, we should look at how we can empower some of the local industries to be part of that project and start a career that will make us fly on the international route.
Thank you, Olu, for your contribution. And once you guys have been speaking, I just put up a poll, and this one is to do with the foreign shareholding. And for me, that's part of the problem, the size of the foreign investor. A bit more about that investor flag a bit later, but the question was, should a foreign investor be the largest single shareholder in a national carrier? And our audience have overwhelmingly said no. 93% who've participated have said no. So I think that this is something that really needs to be looked at, because it's just wrong. We'll go into more details of why it's wrong. There's lots of questions and comments in the chat, so I don't want to speak on things that other people are also going to speak on. So we're going to wrap up our panelist section now. Thank you guys for your contributions, but do stay around to answer questions. And then we'll come back at the end to give you an opportunity to just round up your perspective. So thank you very much, everybody who's participating in the polls. I'm just sharing the results with you now. And I think we've lost Alex again. So,
I'm here.
Oh, so what's happened to my view? Oh, okay, you are underneath the poll. Over to you, Alex.
Well, so here we are. We have the result of the polling, where 93% of all the audience here at this event say foreign shareholding should not be the model for the national carrier project. And so, but who's going to listen? That's the question. Captain Michele has spoken about, and obviously Captain Yaya has spoken about this. We must do it regardless of what anybody thinks and no matter what happens. And that's not in the spirit of governance. Our leaders are supposed to listen to us and act according to our best interest and what they think is what it is that we ought to do. So that is the result of this poll. Would anybody like to add something to that discussion?
I wasn't going to say this now, but I think I might as well. When I look at the partners that Ethiopian Airlines have got around the African continent, the size of the countries, the size of their populations, the value of their GDP per capita, even the value of their GDP, You got a country such as Zambia that negotiated 45%. Nigeria couldn't even negotiate 45%. They're giving away 49% of a bigger market, a more valuable, a more profitable market, you know, a better situated and located, more developed market with the, you know, the domestic routes and all these airports that we have providing domestic connectivity within Nigeria. You know, to not even be able to negotiate better than Zambia, and I have nothing against Zambians, so but to not be able to negotiate better than Zambia just says something about the intent of the negotiations. In my view, I think if Nigeria wanted to have a foreign partner or a foreign manager or whatever, it could have had a better deal rather than the one that it's presenting us with. Somebody's just asked a question which is quite pertinent to what I'm talking about. Without foreign shareholders, how will the project be funded? The thing about the Ethiopian model is they do not bring money, they don't bring cash. They bring their assets, they bring aircraft, they bring engineers, they bring crew. You know, they have their MRO facility, which they will carry their leased aircraft to Addis and repair the aircraft, and we will pay. So people who think Ethiopian Airlines are bringing 300 million, you should look at what the announcement said immediately after we were told the preferred bidder was Ethiopia. And somebody's asked the question, oh, surely there was a bidding process. Yes, there was a bidding process and nobody but Ethiopian Airlines bid. And on the basis of that, they chose Ethiopian Airlines. There was no choice because they were the only ones standing in the room. So it hardly is a proper process whereby you extended the bidding time because you didn't have you know, bids by that time. You extended it again. And even then you had one bid and then you're calling this a preferred bidder. Just say you had one bid and you had no choice but to choose Ethiopian Airlines because you were adamant that whatever happened, you were going to have a national carrier. And that's all it seems to come down to me, that it just doesn't matter what anybody thinks. It doesn't matter what the impact is on Nigeria. It doesn't matter about the embarrassment Nigerians will feel around the world, that their own government doesn't feel like they have the potential and capability to run their own fund and run their own airline. You know, there are several multi-millionaires, billionaires in Nigeria, very wealthy companies. If they had structured things in a way to bring in the funds and then hire professional managers, we wouldn't be having this discussion today. I think everybody would have felt that Nigeria needs better connectivity. We need more competition on international routes, but this is just not the way. So we'll come back to those questions.
Very quickly, Sindy, if I may just add, in ASCAI, Ethiopian holds only 40%. And Togo, a country with about 8 million people, a GDP far less than Lagos State, could negotiate 40% to Ethiopia. And here we are with Nigeria, you know, having all the muscle, not being able to negotiate far below 40%. That's one. Two, in terms of aircraft acquisition, if anybody will take time enough to read through the Vision 2025 by Ethiopian, you would realize that the mode of acquisition of aircraft by Ethiopian is quite straightforward. And any Nigerian carrier can actually do that with the support of government. Ethiopian goes to the African Development Bank to raise the 15% equity that is required for the long-term funding of all their aircraft assets, and then have the 85% structured over a 12-year period, which is a standard practice for most Western airlines. So I believe if the government was going to help, I mean, we have domestic carriers now that have ordered about, Air Peace has about 30 new airplanes on order. Overland has about 5. Ibom Air has about 5 with maybe another 3 as options. So invariably, we have Nigerian domestic carriers that can do the same thing. At this point, not with any government support. So imagine if there was a possibility of getting government support with necessary financial structures for long-term fund access, this can be transformed dramatically. So I believe the government knows what to do, but the choice is essentially because there are vested interests, and this particular contraption called Nigeria Air is something that should not be allowed to go in this form and structure. If we want to have a national carrier, by all means, but bring all the players and stakeholders to the table and let them have full representation and not just kill the whole thing in favor of a particular interest group. That's my position, and that's why I said invariably it is not something that should go forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to turn to the participants. Right now, we have got somebody who's got their hand up. Let me just check if he's still here. Oh, it's Captain Ihai. You've answered, or okay, I think it's gone. And then we've got an attendee who has had their hand up for a while, Simon Tumba. Simon, I'm going to allow you to speak. So are you ready? Please unmute yourself.
Thank you, Cindy. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this very interesting conversation. Well, I want to start with what I believe is the aim and the objective of Nigerian Air. I believe the aim and objective of Nigeria is to consolidate the local market and later on the African market, and then later on in the long term, the continental market. I just wonder, for those who support this project, how can Nigeria Air consolidate the African market with ET being its technical partner and a major shareholder? How is that possible? What is the strength of ET? African market. So how can Nigeria Air be strong in the African market and then consolidate this market and be able to compete continentally? It's definitely not going to happen. So this project is a no-no. And personally, I will want the next government to hold Hadi Sirika responsible for this project. Because this project, obviously, as Captain Roland said, has vested interests. And these interests are in jeopardy concerning the Nigerian interests. These are personal interests. It has nothing to do with patriotic or national interests. Then we look at these partners, the Nigerian partners. Obviously, they ought to have reported their interest in this project at the stock exchange, and they have not done that. And that is very unethical. We all know that. So there are many things in this project that does not make sense. And we all should protest against it. We should get the government to withdraw this project, and this project must stop. The fact that ET is the only interested party that bid on this project, if it is only ET that bidded for this project, and then there's no other bid, that tells you that the project itself has a wrong foundation. So anything that is founded wrongly cannot stand. And we are looking at an airline that wants to compete continentally, not even in African market. So if the foundation is faulty, the long-term interest of this project cannot stand. And we all should protest against it and fight against it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon. We've got Gabriel Idahosa, who's got his hand up, ready to talk. I'm going to ask you all, can you please limit your questions or comments to 1 minute? I'm going to put a timer on. Over to you. Unmute yourself, Gabriel.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. My name is Gabriel Idahosa. I'm a Deputy President of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce, and I'm very interested in this discussion because of what we do there at the Chamber of Commerce. I want to just say that we find quite often when specific industries, in this case, the aviation industry or maritime, wherever, are trying to get government to do some review of policy, they tend to just take a very defensive position that aviation industry players, in this case, are just protecting their interests. And so at the Chamber of Commerce, we are always able to say to governments, let's look beyond the interests of the players and look at the larger economy. And I think what I'm hearing will encourage us to want to do something in that direction in what we do in engaging government. I have made some notes, and I have some questions that have been answered, but I also believe that the aviation industry needs to take some other stakeholders along with them to get government to see the big picture. For example, the investment banking industry has a major role to convince government that the capacity for funding within and outside the country can be pursued by the investment banking industry rather than just hope that a foreign airline like Ethiopia will solve our problems of funding. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gabriel. And we have got Benedict Adeliki. At least we did. It's gone. Okay, it's gone. Right, so I'm going to go to the questions. And oh, hang on, has he come back? Okay. Please unmute yourself. Can you hear? Benedict?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can now. You have 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Cindy. I'm not going to repeat myself. Most of my questions have been answered. However, nobody has said or mentioned the interest of Nigerians. I'm talking about Nigerian pilots, Nigerian engineers, flight dispatchers. The last advert that came out, it was advertised that they're looking for an EASA engineers to work on these flag carriers. I made a call straight away. I was overseas, and I'm surprised that nobody has raised that. And briefly, we're going to start with 3 aircraft, 737-800. Which route? We have local operator in Nigeria that has bigger aircraft like that have been trying to go into London or go to Europe. Which route are they going to operate that we cannot operate? I'm completely, while I am in support of national carrier, I'm completely against Ethiopia. Everybody has said that. I just want to bring that issue of the interest of our pilots, engineers, and employees. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We've got a panelist with their hand up. Olumide?
Yeah,
did you want to respond?
Yes, please. Yeah, I just want to follow what Engineer Adeliki had just talked about. We are going to list 3 aircrafts when we have airlines in the country that can give those 3 aircrafts. We also have NG Eagles have 3737 packed there, right on ground in Lagos there, and they refuse to allow to fly.
Yeah.
Yes, so we should spend these cash dollars to go and get these aircraft. The money is going to Ethiopia Airlines, Ethiopia government, and they're giving us nothing in return. I think we've said a lot about this project. I think we should just start concentrating on how we can continue to develop our aviation industry, spend our time on that now, pending what happens after May 31st. Because the government has made up their mind. They're not ready to listen to anybody anymore. I don't think we just continue to do that. Luckily, we have got 3 airlines that have come aboard since after COVID. It shows that we have a vibrant aviation sector. These are all private individuals, and they are not protected when they're at home, even when they operate outside Nigeria. They are bringing a new set of investors that you want to protect. How will that work? Thank you.
Yeah, and even coming back to this investment thing, nobody said that they were going to bring 300 million. We don't believe SARCO and MRS are bringing the 300 million. We certainly don't believe, based on what's been reported, that Ethiopian Airlines but what we know of their model, they're going to bring 300 million. So when the Ethiopian provides aircraft, crew, whatever, who's going to fund the operations? The outline business case that was signed in 2018 said that the federal government was going to spend money on the startup costs. Okay, startup capital. They're going to spend some money on startup. They were also going to spend money to fund aircraft acquisition, which they haven't done. And they also agreed that they were going to have zero contribution to airline management decisions and zero management control by the government, and that they weren't also going to be putting any public funds into this. That was what they said to the president. No public funds would go into Nigeria Air. So if you don't have a $3 million investor, Nigerians are the ones who are going to pick up the tab for somebody's pet project, which nobody believes is the right thing to do, is likely to decimate the domestic airlines, and it's not going to benefit consumers, because if we reduce the amount of competition that there is, we are not going to end up with lower fares at all, you know? So I wonder what are they going to do about the investment into this national carrier? But I think we got some questions. He's spoken already. Okay, he's spoken already. Is there another one? Oh, Gabriel. Okay, Gabriel, over to you.
Good morning, Sindy. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
And the entire house. I must salute the effort everybody has put into this discussion. What I want to add basically is I was shocked when I saw the general consensus that we needed national carrier. When the voting showed national carrier, I was shocked. Because having submitted all these facts about how the carrier was being formed, everybody must have realized that this is a private company with government endorsement. Iyayi already said it very clearly. Tell me any administration in the last 10 that the ministry and the minister does not try to form an airline. Roland, you can bear me witness. Every successful government wants to float an airline with a signal of government, and that is what you have. And that is what I'm submitting, that we should just regard the airline as another airline. Remove this government and national signal. Another airline has come. Take it or leave it. When government says, I want to do this, and the industry says no, the industry has been backing over the years, and you can't bite. You just back and you can't bite. Is another airline under all this guises that is coming up. My biggest question is, will that airline be insulated from the myriads of problems on ground? If it is not insulated from all the myriads of problems, why do you call it national carrier? And if it is national carrier, what's going to happen to all the existing flag carriers on ground? I think our focus should be level the playing field, let all the airlines have access to the same facility. It is too late for us to stop it, and we should stop calling it national carrier, call it flag carrier. Another one is added, and let them go to the same field and play the game. When you talk about aeropolitics, how much support has government given to your existing airlines on ground? If they don't have those support, who plays politics? Is it not government that play politics? When Airpeace wants to go to London, what support did they get from government to go to London? Don't blame the foreign airlines that are here. It is your government that left the airline unsupported. And tomorrow morning, if you have your Air Nigeria, who says it will reciprocate to all the existing buses? It is not possible. So my submission this morning is that this is another carrier and a private carrier. Remove the national there. There is nothing national here. It's a flag carrier. Whoever owns it doesn't bother me, but remove government endorsement. Level the playing field. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. It certainly does sound like it's more of an African carrier than a Nigerian or a national carrier, because I don't see how you can have two competing government interests in this particular airline. Sometimes the supporters give examples of the KLM Air France partnership, but that is a partnership of equals. It's not a partnership of a 75-year-old or 77-year-old airline this year, whose sole goal is to dominate the African market any way that they can, which is admirable. It's an admirable objective of Ethiopian Airlines. Nobody here underestimates the experience and value that Ethiopian Airlines has brought to the African continent. But I personally would like to see Nigeria launch an airline that can compete with Ethiopian Airlines in due course, which will give consumers a better opportunity of having lower fares and more connectivity than if we allow a monopoly. That's what we're seeing developing within neo-colonialism coming out of Ethiopian Airlines, picking off the smaller African countries and airlines along the way. And now they've been banging on the door of Nigeria for years. And I was told Nigeria would never agree to this because of, national pride and national interest. But unfortunately, when personal interest, box ticking, roadmap ticking gets into focus, national interest goes out of the window.
Absolutely.
So I think, we will go to the questions. Jake Goldstein says, do we not think we can benefit from their expertise? They've been in business for several years. Does anybody want to take that question?
Yes, I will take that. I'll take that. We will definitely benefit from the expertise of Ethiopian Airlines. And expertise is something you buy. If you look at the structure of an airline like Emirates, Emirates is a leading global airline, and what they have done is hired the best people around the world to come and establish and run the airline, and that is the national pride model. Dr. Lowo said earlier that since this airline will not be insulated from the challenges that are faced in this industry, we can't insulate any airline. Michelle has said earlier that what we need is policy change, one that benefits all of the players in the airline industry in Nigeria, that allows the industry to grow. So while Ethiopian has many values it brings to a table, those values are better exploited under an arrangement where a national carrier, a Nigerian national carrier, which is our ambition and our dream and aspirations as Nigerians to have our flag fly around the world, is formed, and we ask if we enter into a management agreement for some stipulated time frame, or we hire the best people from Ethiopia. Today, there are Nigerians working at Ethiopian Airlines. Yesterday, we saw a picture of the all Nigerian crew on Emirates Airlines. These are the kind of things that work in the kind of global economy we operate under, not one that is deliberately established to snuff out the life of the possibility. When we talk about airline, it seems like it's only about airplanes going. If Ethiopia, for example, achieved a 49% of the national carrier of Nigeria, and by implication, BASA is not honored by, say, Europe and the US, etc. It means that Nigerians will not have to go on Ethiopian to these BASA destinations. Ethiopian doesn't fly from Nigeria to these destinations. They'll take these millions of Nigerians to Addis Ababa, and they'll make more in Nigeria. They'll make money on those Nigerians. The whole appeal here is of having an airline that benefits, that doesn't drain the human resource. Benedict said something earlier that we seem to have glossed over. When the advert was made, it was made for EASA qualified engineers. Most of us that are non-aviation people would not understand that. It means you want engineers that are certified under European rules. That doesn't create jobs for Nigerians. It creates in Europe and have European rules. So look, the promise here is that this airline will create 70 million jobs. How many airlines in the world have 70 million employees? Okay, that is a challenge. So the quest here and the
Well, and the demand here is that we establish an airline that benefits Nigeria as a country, the economy, brings in foreign exchange, creates ease of travel for Nigerians direct to everywhere, supports our airports by allowing planes to passengers to transit throughout all of Africa and the world to various destinations. So it's not just about flying from point A to B, it's about supporting everything around the aviation sector.
I'm going to bring two participants to ask the question live, but whilst I'm doing that, we've got a question from Trevor Henry from ValueJet. And he says, the involvement of an international airline partner will strengthen the national carrier by providing interlining opportunities beyond that airline's home base. Any of the Nigerian airlines that operate international routes are limited to point-to-point traffic only, which is restrictive to operate successfully. Would anybody like to take that question?
Well, you know, interlining is an opportunity that is open to any carrier, you know, so there's no real advantage for one specific carrier. Yes, go ahead, sorry, Babatunde.
Oh, yes, I was just going to reinforce what you said. Basically, we have at least 3 IOSA carriers, and with IOSA certification, you can do interline. So you don't have to be a partner to interline. Thank you.
Okay, we've got, I've just lost him now. Ahmed Isiaku. Are you there, Ahmed, ready to talk? Please unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. You have 1 minute.
Okay, all right, Ma. Actually, I'm delighted to be here as a flight dispatcher. This is the first time I am participating in a conference like this. So even though we have problems as flight dispatchers in Nigeria, I didn't hear anything about flight dispatchers in the discussion. So I want to hear, because what I heard that part of what they are looking for in terms of the engineers is that they are looking for people with the IASA qualification or certification. So how far about the flight dispatchers? How are they going to operate? How are they going to conduct the operations? Would they require their own flight dispatchers with FAA from elsewhere and still render our own flight dispatchers in Nigeria useless? And moreover, I'm still not interested in the whole thing. Really, something needs to be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You've brought up, Roland, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to quickly jump there to address some of the concerns he's raised. Very quickly, just to let you know, the airplanes that are going to be brought to Nigeria will be registered, flagged as Ethiopian. And that being the case, all the technical crew operating on the airplanes must carry the Ethiopian licenses. This is essentially what happens out of Togo with Askai. So invariably, I do not see a situation where the Nigeria Air concept as currently structured would provide any form of employment at this point to technical crew in Nigeria, at least in the foreseeable future, except of course, we're being told, or we will be told, that the airplanes being brought in will be deregistered and put on the Nigerian register, in which case we'll have Nigerian crewing 100% ab initio. But that's not the case, because we're told the Ethiopians will bring the airplanes in on their register, have it crewed, maintained, and operated. It's basically we're talking about a wet lease.
Yeah, well, so, sorry.
At least for the first couple of months, if that's the case, we would not anticipate to have any technical crew from Nigeria, except of course ground staff to sort of manage the turnarounds between stations, if at all. And then again, there is absolutely no way any airline being conceived can employ 1 million people. The very best we can have, Nigeria Airways at its height had 10,000 people. So I really cannot see where Nigeria Air will be able to employ 1 million people, even with direct, indirect, and induced labor. I doubt it. But in any case, the case has to be made to justify it. So numbers have to be bandied. Thank you.
Thanks, Roland. You walked right into the point that I was going to make. We were told that Nigeria Air would employ 70,000 people. 70,000 Nigerians is what we assumed. But even then, those of us within the aviation industry looked at that figure and thought it's highly unlikely. When you look at a carrier such as Ethiopian Airlines, who've been around for nearly 77 years, and they don't employ 14,000 people. You know, for all the international operations that they do, they have less than 14,000 people employed in that airline. Kenya Airways employs, 3,500. Egypt Air, 9,000. Qatar, with the reach that they have around the world, 50,000. And the support that they have from their government in terms of investment. So Nigeria Air already starting off and underemploying Nigerians isn't really a good start at all. So thank you very much for making that point. We've got Akinola Kola Akinlade with his hand up. I'm going to allow you to speak. Are you ready? Please unmute yourself. Kola? Okay, he's not ready. Okay.
Yeah, I'm ready. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Please go ahead.
Yes, what I just want to make is just a brief observation. Coming from the African context, and this our dictum, they say, somebody puts load on his head and he has a knocking knees. And you now find that the load on the head is tilted to one side. You are just looking at the load that is tilted. People in Africa say, look at the foundation. By the time you find the knocking knees, you know there is no way the load on the head could be straightened. Forgetting just ordinary delivery, over 1 million Nigerians participated. This thing went on air. It went so viral, but not over 1 million Nigerians was fit enough to produce a delivery. It came from UAE. Under that guy, so what do you expect to do? As simple as that. Where is patriotism? Where is national interest? You see that one? Then we went to Farnborough 2018. What did we go to Farnborough to market? What did we go there to announce? People traveled, paid airfare. People traveled, they stayed in the hotel. People therefore they make some presentation. People traveled, they got some extra code and they return. What did we go there to market? All those expenses incurred. Where was it? Who retires it? That's where we are. Then in the same country, an agency said they wanted to create a national carrier. Then we are having Nigeria do or non-Nigeria. Mind you have a regulator. Mind you have a full ministry. Then an agency that is just to recoup government's fund is going to aviation. And the thing is so discordant, the regulator could not check it, the ministry could not check it, and just does dance like garage boys in town, and the thing just went off again like that. And you see those foundations. Now, so when this thing was started, it started with the heads of the agency as people think tank to draw this national carrier. All of a sudden, it fizzled out, got one man portfolio to be as consultant, and it comes out that so we have seen the picture.
Thank you, Kola. Your sound is very, very low. So I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut you so that we can go to some other questions. I want to go to some of the comments and questions that we've got in the chat. Let me just quickly say, okay, so John Howell wanted to know there can't be a local carrier due to ownership rules. No, they have to partner as cannot own more than 49%. Is that right? I'm not sure I understand. Oh, I think this is going back to somebody's suggestion that Ethiopian Airline be allowed to operate in Nigeria, domestic market. Well, ASKY already do. They do. They operate out of the domestic market to other places. So I'm not sure what the problem was with that comment. Someone says, dear all, I hope we're not crying over spilt milk since 8 years have gone on this to be or not to be debate of national carrier. The industry should simply accept the airline as yet another airline in Nigeria and advocate level playing field for all Nigerian carriers. Well, we've tried that. Captain Michelia agrees with Dr. Olawolo's position. We do need Nigerian carriers to mitigate capital flight that has caused the recent threat by Emirates and co. Ethiopian Airlines is the wrong choice if the purpose is to build a viable carrier. We've got people commending the statement of the AON spokesperson and Babatunde and various other contributors. Somebody's asked, so I can't see the names. Gabriel says, why a wet lease rather than dry lease? Don't we have the personnel to man the aircraft Ethiopian is supplying? Now, does anybody know why it is that? Is it because we don't have the money to do a dry lease, and they are bringing a wet lease as their part of the contribution from the $3 million that they're not bringing? Does anybody know what the justification is of that? No? Okay, so that's a question that we can follow up afterwards. Lots of people are saying flag carriers are ideal, not looking for national carriers at all. Now this is Lieutenant Colonel Vijay Thomas says, unless the full-fledged plan for establishing a national carrier is a hub in West Africa, unless the full-fledged plan for establishing it as hub in West Africa is done, it's a costly proposition. I suggest for an integrated plan for ECOWAS, go for a long-term solution which can be sustained. Write to me how India can support. Thank you very much. Support is what we need, not neo-colonialism. Okay, I'll copy your details. Thank you very much for that. Des Ocon says, I'm a bit curious. Everyone seems to be worried about the dominance of ET and how it can potentially ruin the local operators. I want to believe, okay, somebody else asked that question as well. So I think you've had the answer to that question. There was a bidding process, but it was a not satisfactory bidding process. Jacqueline, can't see a full name, says, please, what's the fate of the pensioners retired with Nigeria Airways Limited as they were officially retired by the government? Well, we had hoped to have a union person on the webinar today, but unfortunately he wasn't able to join because that was one of the questions that I wanted to ask. But that question we will save and follow up on afterwards. Okay, we answered Elvis's question. Desmond asks again, is there a possibility that with ET, local airlines can begin to fly into their country? Someone mentioned here that Air Peace was at some point denied entry. Well, not only was Air Peace recently denied entry, Nigerians were, you know, removed from the list of countries that could do visa on arrival. So, and this is like a week or two after they were announced as preferred bidder. So I think your guess is as good as ours as to what the intent is. With most of these things, the intent is to access your market, not give you access to theirs. So, because if you look at the other countries where Ethiopian Airlines have partnered with, very great strategists. They've done a good job of serving their own interests. I don't think you've got any of their partners flying, you know, domestically or anything within Ethiopia. Now somebody says, James, very sorry, for some reason names are truncated. But this question is from James, and James says, my own take on the national carrier matter is that the minister is just desperate to get the so-called national carrier off the ground at all costs without minding the pros and cons. This government's tenure is terminating next year, so he just wants it. If care is not taken, it's going to end like Virgin Nigeria. It's going to be a feeder airline to Ethiopian Airlines, which I think is what most people think. Okay, I've got a question here. This is from Martin Nafor. What is the exact name of the proposed airline? It is Nigeria Air, and I think it's the second time Nigeria Air has popped up in the history of national carriers in Nigeria. And he says, what is the opinion of the transaction advisor from UK on this? I don't really understand that question. Martin, if you're still with us, feel free to put your hand up and then you can ask that question yourself. You go on to ask, what does 5% stand for? Is it the cost of Nigerian air routes? No, we believe that the 300 million was the cost to access Nigerian air routes. And they were meant to bring that as operating expenditure into the airline. So I don't think because no one's brought any money, it means that there's no value in the Nigerian air routes. It's just that it sounds like the need to have a national carrier by any means necessary took over from the need to have a fully funded national carrier by private sector, which is what we were led to believe we were going to get. And we've got a comment from Adamola on it. Tiju, sorry if I'm butchering your names. It's part of the shenanigans, bandying figures about to the undiscerning Nigerian public, 70,000 jobs. Ha, Sirika Blues. Now, Olawanle Maronk something, sorry, your name is truncated, says, can we assume that the reference to 1 million employment by the carrier include both direct and indirect employments? Well, I don't think we can assume anything at this point. Unless the airline is fully funded, the number of employees are going to be limited anyway. It can't possibly take 70,000 employees, but it certainly needs to take more Nigerian employees than any foreign country employee. And Martin has asked again, what is the place of the FEC approval for lease of aircraft? I believe they approved it, but the approval came out in a bit of a weird way. We were told, originally we were told they were going to wet lease aircraft. Then there were loads of press announcements that they were actually dry leasing aircraft. But then when they made the announcement of ET as the preferred bidder, we saw a paragraph which should have been removed, deleted from the final copy, which said ET was bringing aircraft, it was bringing engineers, and it was bringing pilots, I think it said, or crew. And so therefore, that doesn't sound like it's a dry lease, which is what we believe that FEC approved. Okay, so Lola Adefope says, a Nigerian carrier will always have considerably more employees than those of other countries, like Qatar, we are using for comparison, due to our inefficiencies, lack of infrastructure, lack of aviation and airport technology, and the need for manual processes and the general creation of jobs for friends that we like to do. The number won't be anywhere near what has been quoted, but will be ridiculously high in comparison to an efficient carrier. Well, that's an interesting point, Lola. This airline is supposed to be being run on commercial basis. So there is no time or opportunity for jobs for the boys. It needs to be run by professionals and driven with efficiency and profit in mind. And so it can't possibly have we can't allow for Nigerian lack of productivity or inefficiencies to destabilize the national carrier, which is supposed to be the savior of Nigerian aviation. So I think those are all the chat questions. And we're going to finish in 10 minutes. I'm just going to make sure that we've covered everybody's questions in the questions and answers. Ekelem Erhirinen has said, with global monetary tightening and rising interest rates, will the calculations on return on investment for the national carrier still be the same? Does somebody want to take that question? Return on investment. There's no investment, so I think.
But there is the consideration that has been put forward by some of the panelists here, that the short-term goal for Ethiopian is not profit, for which you talk about return on investment. It's about market dominance. And so it is a
common business strategy that you go into a market that you want to dominate, deflate prices so that competitors can exit the market. And when they do exit market, you increase your prices to recover. So you take a long-term play as opposed to a short-term play strategy in situations like this. So where they may not be may not be profitable, which is why you don't see 15 airlines lining up to bid to enter into the market at this time, and only one standing there. We know for obvious reasons, the short-term goal is not profit. That is not the short-term goal.
Okay, fair point. Thank you, Alex. Just check to see if there are any other questions. Okay, I don't know if we have tackled this one fully. Will Nigeria Air be insulated from the myriads of problems already plaguing the industry? Can it sufficiently reciprocate all the existing buses alone? And 3, in how many years? That's a question from Dr. Gabriel Olawa. Alex, do you want to answer?
Yes. It's impossible. You see, we can't automatically assume that because we've created Nigeria Air, whether by Nigerians or with Ethiopian, that we will solve all the problems in one day. The important step is, like we say, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. So do we misstep because we want to do that? So we cannot reciprocate all the buses. We will still have foreign carriers, not just Ethiopian, coming into this market as we build capacity within our own local market. The concern of many of the proponents here is that if we don't build capacity, we will never get there, and we'll totally always be reliant on a foreign carrier, in this case, Ethiopian Airlines, in the guise of a Nigerian national carrier. So we cannot reciprocate all the buses. It will take time to build that capacity with or without Ethiopian Airlines, even with Ethiopian Airlines. But with Ethiopian Airlines, we're not going to get there. We're never going to take those steps. And so that's the major issue on that question.
So this is going to be the last question, I think. Ifeanyi Onimadu says, has this been done successfully anywhere in Africa? So Ethiopian Airlines has entered into partnerships with quite a few countries to launch national carriers. Have any of their partnerships been a success?
You know, success is relative. Every one of these partnerships for Ethiopian has been successful. But what does it mean for Zambia or Malawi or Guinea or even Askai, their most successful carrier? The only major international destination, Askai doesn't have any destinations outside of Africa. They go to South Africa now in complement to what Ethiopian Airlines does. But so essentially, if you look at the Askai model, Askai uses all Ethiopian registered airplanes with Ethiopian crews mainly. Of course, Ethiopian hires crews from all over the world, but it essentially, Ethiopian collects a management fee for the operation of that Askai service. They collect maintenance fees for the maintenance of the aircraft paid for by the investors in Askai. So its success is relative. It's always successful for Ethiopian. Will it be successful for Nigeria? And all the arguments here state that it will not be successful for Nigeria.
Thank you. Given that we've run over by 15, 16 minutes, I think we're going to draw this discussion to an end. I'm just going to give our panelists an opportunity to say their final closing words, and let's try and finish this event. Thank you very much from the audience for all your very helpful participation. We will save the questions and see how we can answer these going forward in another forum. But thank you very much for your questions.
Thank you.
So who do we have? We got Wale. Let's start with you. 1 minute.
Thank you. Thank you. I also want to thank everybody for sparing your time to join this webinar. It's one of the most stimulating seminars that I've attended or I've been part of in recent years. Kudos to all the people that put this together. And we also think that the government is listening to some of the things that we have discussed here to go back to the drawing table, if need be, to see how we can make this thing work. I think we need to give this airline the chance, the opportunity, and then see where it's going to be. I also support what Dr. Olowo said, that this is just another airline. I was even surprised when we start mentioning national carrier. I think the 5% equity in that airline is just to give it the protection it needs, not going to be run by government, not going to be run the way Nigeria Airways was run. I just think that we need to give it a chance and see how it goes. And I want to believe that the government officials are listening to take to some of the corrections, some of the decisions, no, not decisions, some of the presentations that the beautiful panelists have made here. I thank you once again.
Thank you, Wale. Thank you. And we'll go to Babatunde. Your closing comments, please.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, everybody, for having me. Basically, the Nigerian aviation industry is in dire straits. That's the reality. The national carrier or any other solution is not a silver bullet and will never be. We need to work on the industry structure. It's challenged. You have, duopoly in terms of your handling company. Most of the agencies are government owned, and basically they are doing government mandated fares or prices rather than economic ones. The consumers themselves are challenged with the economic situation in the country. Our general macro situation is very damaging for a very sensitive industry like ours. So there are real fundamental issues to be solved that involves the entire ecosystem. I think our energy should be spent towards really critically evaluating the issues the ecosystem has and how to solve it sustainably. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And over to you, Group Captain Ojikutu. You're currently muted, so please unmute yourself. But I think you're frozen as well. So let's move to Olu. Are you still with us, Olu? Your camera's off. Okay.
Yes, I'm still with you, but I can't have the camera now because I'm on the move.
Yeah, that's okay.
I would like to close with us looking at the issue of the Fly Nigerian bill. It's something necessity for the Nigerian domestic carriers, the market, fiscal market that we come to there. For the US, they have it. In Britain, it's kind of a morality thing that you see that the public officials go on British Airlines. And for Australia, there's a department that coordinates all public travels, and airlines come there to bid. So I think we should look at that critical market for the Nigerian operators and then see how we can have that bill come on board. We don't have to have everybody flying now on all routes. We can start with just charter flights and begin to build as we begin to expand. The Fly American bill is being expanded and filtered every day to meet with the current realities. That can also happen with the Fly Nigerian app. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, it's me unmuted. My energy's wearing out. Group Captain, you're back with us and unfrozen. You're just 1 minute with your final words, please. Let me unmute you or us. Can you unmute yourself? It's not.
Okay. Like I said earlier, we've been battling with contaminated wine in an old screen. We have seen a lot of experiences in the past before with this type of union. I have seen union between Nigerian Airways and KLM. It didn't work. I have seen the union between Nigerian Airways and the South African Airways. It didn't work. I don't believe it's going to work again this time. I followed it up to 2019 when I thought it was going to germinate. But I discovered that it was more or less government driven. So rather than for us to have a national carrier, I was saying something like a government carrier. So my advice now is for us to start looking for a way to have at least 2 flag carriers in this country. One for continental flights and the other one for intercontinental flights. What we can do for the domestic airline is to reduce the destinations we are giving to the foreign airline in this country, including the Ethiopian airline, we need to reduce it to maximum 2, and the 2 must not be Lagos and Abuja. Rather, you take Abuja and take one other one for the south, so that we can create market for the domestic market. I mean, for the domestic airline. And how do we do that? If these airlines, the foreign airlines, are going to fly into the 2 international airports, one in the north and one in the south, they can come in several times in a day, so that we can use that to create market for our own domestic airline. The type of interlining they are going to do for the connecting and the distribution passengers will now be paid to the domestic airlines in dollars, in foreign exchange. The way we are going now, if we don't handle it properly, like I said, I don't expect that the partnership or the marriage between us and Ethiopian Airlines, I don't expect that it's going to work. Let us start thinking of forming 2 flag carriers, one continental and one intercontinental, using our own domestic airline, particularly Air Peace. And maybe if we can solve the problem of ARIC and Aero, we use their aircraft to start. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I think it's over to you. Alex, I think you're the last one to speak. Has Tunde spoken?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I think everybody's spoken quite
Yeah.
extensively and the day is fast gone. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming as panelists and for signing up to participate in this conference. We hope to see you at a future Aviation Town Hall meeting where we will dissect the issues around this industry. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to see you all and we welcome you again next time.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody,
Bye.
for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.
I saw something here.